Think Donald Trump is one of a kind? Think again. Over 100 years ago, America had another president who followed an eerily similar path. His name? Grover Cleveland. The similarities are strange, the coincidences are jaw-dropping, and by the end of this video, you might just believe history is playing tricks on us. 1. Comeback presidents. One of the rarest feats in American politics is returning to the presidency after being voted out. For over a century, only one man had ever achieved it: Grover Cleveland. Cleveland first entered the White House in 1885, served 4 years, and then narrowly lost his re-election bid in 1888. Most politicians would have faded into history, but Cleveland wasn't done. 4 years later, in 1892, he staged a remarkable comeback, defeating the incumbent and reclaiming the presidency. This made him the only U.S. president to serve 2 non-consecutive terms, until now. In 2025, Donald J. Trump joined that exclusive club. After winning the presidency in 2016, Trump lost to Joe Biden in 2020. Many assumed his political career was over. Instead, Trump maintained a strong presence in public life, holding rallies, endorsing candidates, and dominating headlines. His loyal base stayed energized, and in the 2024 election, he pulled off one of the most closely watched political comebacks in modern history. On January 20th, 2025, Trump was sworn in as the 47th President of the United States, marking the first time in 132 years that a former president returned to power after a break in service. For both Cleveland and Trump, the comeback wasn't just about winning an election, it was about defying conventional wisdom. Each man refused to accept political defeat as final, using persistence, public connection, and relentless campaigning to reclaim the highest office in the land. Their stories prove that in American politics, history really can repeat itself. 2. Outsiders who took over their parties. Grover Cleveland and Donald Trump share another unusual political trait. Both entered national politics as outsiders and went on to seize control of their parties. Cleveland began his career far from Washington's inner circles. As mayor of Buffalo and later governor of New York, he built a reputation as a reformer, someone unafraid to challenge corruption, even when it meant clashing with powerful figures within his own Democratic Party. At a time when political machines dominated candidate selection, Cleveland's rise sent shockwaves through the party establishment. By the time he reached the presidency, he had effectively reshaped the Democrats' image, presenting them as a party that could stand for clean government and principled leadership. Donald Trump's journey was even more unconventional. Coming from the world of business and entertainment, Trump had no traditional political resume when he announced his candidacy in 2015. Few Republican insiders took him seriously until he started winning. By defeating a crowded field of seasoned politicians, Trump transformed the Republican Party's priorities, rhetoric, and base of support. In both cases, these outsiders didn't just win elections, they remade their parties in their own image, proving that a strong personality and a clear message could overpower entrenched political structures. 3. Scandal magnet. Grover Cleveland and Donald Trump both learned that political life often means living under the shadow of controversy. In Cleveland's case, one of the most damaging episodes came during his first presidential campaign in 1884. Reports surfaced accusing him of fathering an illegitimate child years earlier. Newspapers had a field day, and his opponents turned it into a rallying cry with the chant, "Mama, where's my pa?" Instead of denying the story outright, Cleveland advised his supporters to tell the truth, admitting he had supported the child's mother financially. Surprisingly, this forthrightness helped him weather the storm, and he still won the election. Trump's political career has been defined by an even greater volume of controversies, both personal and political. From tabloid scandals and inflammatory remarks to 2 impeachment trials and multiple legal battles, Trump's opponents have repeatedly predicted that one controversy or another would end his career. Yet each time, his base rallied behind him, often viewing the attacks as proof that he was challenging entrenched powers. For both Cleveland and Trump, scandals did not sink their political fortunes. Instead, they became strange assets, energizing their most loyal supporters and reinforcing their image as fighters against a hostile establishment. 4. love-hate relationship with the media. For both Grover Cleveland and Donald Trump, the press was both a relentless critic and an unexpected ally. Cleveland rose to national prominence in the late 19th century, a time when newspapers were highly partisan and unrestrained in their attacks. Once he became a serious presidential contender, the press scrutinized every aspect of his life, from his policies to his personal affairs. Some papers portrayed him as a stubborn, overly moralistic figure, while others praised his honesty. Yet, even his harshest critics couldn't resist covering him, keeping his name constantly in the public eye. The attention, though often negative, helped solidify his image as a determined and principled leader who wouldn't bow to media pressure. Trump's relationship with the media has been even more dramatic. A former reality TV star, he understands the power of publicity and uses it to his advantage. While frequently attacking journalists and calling unfavorable coverage fake news, he simultaneously thrives on the constant attention. His rallies, controversial statements, and social media posts often dominate headlines for days. In both cases, their contentious media relationships became a defining feature of their political brands, turning conflict with the press into a powerful tool for rallying supporters and shaping public perception. 5. Straight-talking image. Grover Cleveland earned the nickname Grover the Good for his reputation as a man of blunt honesty and unshakable principles. As mayor of Buffalo and later governor of New York, he became known for vetoing bills he believed wasted public money, even if those bills were popular. This same approach carried into his presidency, where he opposed policies he felt were dishonest or self-serving, sometimes angering his own party. Cleveland's unwillingness to sugarcoat his views or compromise on his values built a reputation for integrity, even among those who disagreed with him. Donald Trump's version of straight talk is different in style, but similar in effect. Supporters praise him for telling it like it is and speaking in plain, direct language rather than the carefully measured words of typical politicians. While his critics see this as reckless or inflammatory, his base views it as refreshing honesty, a sign he's not afraid to say what others won't. For both men, authenticity, whether rooted in moral principle like Cleveland's or in breaking political norms like Trump's, became a key selling point. Their directness set them apart from the political establishment and helped define their personal brand in the eyes of voters. 6. Divisive but loyal support base. Grover Cleveland's political career was built on the devotion of reform-minded voters who admired his integrity and independence. These supporters saw him as a man willing to challenge the entrenched corruption of the era. However, this same independence often alienated powerful political bosses within his own Democratic Party, who preferred leaders they could control. Cleveland's refusal to play by their rules meant he was respected by some, but resented by many within the political establishment. Still, his reformist base was fiercely loyal, turning out in force to back him at the polls, even when party insiders worked against him. Donald Trump's political rise followed a similar dynamic. His base, made up of passionate supporters who felt ignored by traditional politicians, embraced his outsider status and populist message. While these voters saw him as a champion of their concerns, much of the political establishment, both Republican and Democrat, viewed him as unpredictable and disruptive. That mutual hostility only strengthened the loyalty of his supporters, who rallied around him in the face of elite criticism. Both Cleveland and Trump proved that a dedicated, energized core of supporters can be more powerful than lukewarm, broad approval. In politics, passion often wins where consensus cannot. 7. Big on trade issues. Trade policy was a defining battleground for both Grover Cleveland and Donald Trump, though they approached it from very different angles. Cleveland, governing in the late 19th century, believed that excessively high tariffs unfairly burdened ordinary Americans while enriching powerful industrialists. He argued that lowering tariffs would reduce the cost of goods and make trade fairer for consumers. This stance put him at odds with many in his own Democratic Party, and especially with business elites who benefited from protectionist policies. His strong push for tariff reform became one of the central themes of his presidency, even though it cost him political support among powerful interests. Trump, more than a century later, took the opposite route on tariffs, but with the same level of intensity. He made trade a centerpiece of his political agenda, renegotiating NAFTA into the USMCA, confronting China over trade imbalances, and imposing tariffs to protect American industries. For Trump, trade was not just an economic issue, but a matter of national strength and sovereignty. Despite their opposing strategies, both leaders used trade policy to challenge the status quo, make bold economic statements, and appeal to their core supporters, proving that trade can be as much about politics as it is about economics. 8. Their time in the White House wasn't easy. Both Grover Cleveland and Donald Trump faced defining crises during their presidencies, events that tested their leadership and shaped how history remembers them. For Cleveland, the most significant challenge came during his second term with the Panic of 1893, one of the worst economic depressions in U.S. history. Banks collapsed, businesses failed, and unemployment soared. At the same time, major labor unrest erupted, most notably the Pullman Strike of 1894, which disrupted rail transportation nationwide. Cleveland's decision to send federal troops to break the strike sparked fierce debate, praised by some for restoring order, condemned by others for siding with business over workers. Trump's presidency was rocked by an entirely different kind of crisis: the COVID-19 pandemic. The virus brought the nation to a standstill, triggering lockdowns, mass unemployment, and a public health emergency unprecedented in modern times. His administration faced intense scrutiny over its handling of the crisis, with opinions sharply divided along political lines. On top of that, Trump navigated one of the most polarized political climates in U.S. history, with constant clashes between his supporters and opponents. In both cases, their presidencies were defined as much by crisis management as by policy, proving that leadership is often measured in the storm, not in the calm. 9. Family life in the spotlight. Grover Cleveland's personal life drew as much public attention as his political career, especially when it came to his marriage. In 1886, while serving as president, Cleveland married Frances Folsom, a woman 27 years his junior. She became the youngest First Lady in U.S. history at just 21 years old. Their wedding, held in the White House, was a media sensation, making headlines nationwide. Frances quickly became a popular figure, admired for her poise and charm, and the public followed the couple's life with keen interest. Their family life softened Cleveland's image, adding a human touch to a president often portrayed as stern and serious. Donald Trump's family life has also been a central part of his public image, though in a very different way. His marriages, divorces, and high-profile wedding to Melania Trump were widely covered in the media long before his presidency. Once in the White House, his children, Donald Jr., Ivanka, Eric, Tiffany, and Barron, often appeared at political events, campaign rallies, and in media interviews. Ivanka in particular took on a visible advisory role, further fueling public fascination. For both men, their first families became part of the broader political narrative, shaping how the public connected with them beyond their policies. 10. Legacy still being debated. Grover Cleveland's place in history remains a subject of debate more than a century after his presidency. Supporters remember him as a principled reformer who stood against corruption, fought for fiscal responsibility, and refused to bend to political pressure. Critics, however, portray him as a rigid obstructionist whose unwillingness to compromise sometimes hindered progress. His handling of the 1893 economic depression and the Pullman strike, in particular, continues to divide historians. Was he protecting the nation's stability or siding with the powerful against ordinary workers? Donald Trump's legacy is still in the making, but it is already shaping up to be just as contested. Admirers see him as a visionary disruptor who challenged the political establishment, reshaped U.S. trade policy, and spoke directly to voters who felt ignored by Washington. His detractors, on the other hand, view him as a dangerous populist whose rhetoric deepened national divisions and undermined democratic norms. From judicial appointments to foreign policy moves, every aspect of his presidency will likely be re-examined for decades to come. For both Cleveland and Trump, their impact defies simple labels. Their legacies are complex, polarizing, and ultimately a mirror of the deep divides in the eras they led. Two men, 2 centuries apart, two political comebacks that stunned the nation. Grover Cleveland and Donald Trump may have faced different worlds, but their journeys prove that in American politics, history really can repeat itself. So, is Trump the modern-day Cleveland, or is he writing a brand new chapter? Only time will tell. If you enjoyed this look at history's strange parallels, make sure to hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell so you never miss a new video.